Pam Bondi fined $100,000 for wearing a cross, but her response leaves the judge looking ridiculous in front of everyone. The gold cross caught the courtroom light as Pam Bondi rose to speak, a small defiant glimmer against her crisp navy suit. In the momentary silence before she could utter her first word, Judge Raymond Hoffman's eyes locked onto the necklace with such sudden intensity that several jurors followed his gaze. "Miss Bondi," Judge H's voice cracked through the courtroom like a whip. "Approach the bench, now." The tension that surged through courtroom 306 of the Tampa Federal Building was immediate and electric. Pam had been standing before judges for over 20 years, but something in Hoffman's tone, a cold fury barely contained by judicial decorum, made the hairs on her arms stand on end. She approached slowly, her heels clicking against the polished floor in a measured rhythm. Her client, Jeffrey Reen, CEO of Gulf Coast Manufacturing, shot her a puzzled look. They'd been preparing for this contract dispute for months, and nothing in their preparation had suggested any issues with the judge. As Pam reached the bench, Judge Hoffman leaned forward, his voice low enough that only she and the clerk beside him could hear. "That religious symbol around your neck," he said, each word precise and brittle. "Remove it. Immediately." Pam's hand instinctively moved to the cross, a gift from her grandmother on the day she passed the bar. She'd worn it to every court appearance of her career. "Excuse me, Your Honor." The words came out reflexively, her mind still processing the unexpected demand. Judge Hoffman's eyes narrowed. The clerk beside him stared fixedly at her computer screen, clearly uncomfortable. "You heard me, counselor. That cross violates the neutrality of my courtroom. Religion has no place in federal proceedings." Pam felt her pulse quicken, but kept her expression professionally neutral. Judge Hoffman's reputation preceded him. Appointed 3 years ago, he was known for his uncompromising demeanor and unpredictable rulings. The attorneys who appeared before him called him Hurricane Hoffman behind his back, a force of nature that could shift direction without warning and leave devastation in his wake. "Your Honor, with all respect, this is personal jewelry. It doesn't disrupt court proceedings or create bias any more than a wedding ring would." Something dangerous flashed across Hoffman's face. "Are you questioning my authority in my own courtroom, Miss Bondi?" The courtroom had fallen completely silent behind them. Though the conversation at the bench was quiet, the tension was palpable. The opposing counsel, Martin Chen, was watching intently, his legal pad forgotten before him. "No, Your Honor," Pam replied carefully. "I'm simply stating that this cross has personal significance to me." "I don't care if it was blessed by the Pope himself," Hoffman cut her off. "In my courtroom we maintain absolute neutrality. That means no religious symbols on display by any officer of the court. Return to your table and remove it, or face the consequences." For a moment Pam considered her options. She could comply, tuck the necklace into her blouse, and proceed with her client's case. It would be the pragmatic choice. But something in Hoffman's tone, the arbitrary exercise of power with no legal basis, struck a chord too deep to ignore. She straightened her spine. "I'm afraid I cannot do that, Your Honor." Judge Hoffman's jaw tightened. "Then you leave me no choice. Return to your table, Miss Bondi." As Pam walked back, she could feel every eye in the courtroom following her. Jeffrey leaned toward her and whispered, "What's happening?" Before she could answer, Judge Hoffman's voice boomed across the courtroom. "Let the record show that attorney Pamela Bondi has been instructed to remove a religious symbol that violates the neutrality of these proceedings and has willfully refused to comply." His gavel struck the sound block with unnecessary force. "This court finds her in contempt and issues a fine of $100,000 to be paid within 30 days. The reaction was immediate. A collective gasp rippled through the gallery. Jeffrey's face went pale. Martin Chen, the opposing counsel, dropped his pen. Even the court reporter paused, her fingers frozen above her stenotype machine. The amount was staggering, vindictive even. Contempt fines for attorneys typically range from $500 to perhaps $5,000 in extreme cases. $100,000 wasn't a fine, it was financial ruin deliberately inflicted. Pam felt a rush of adrenaline but kept her voice steady. "Your Honor, I must formally object to this fine. There is no legal basis for prohibiting religious jewelry in a federal courtroom, and the amount is clearly punitive and excessive." Judge Hoffman's face darkened further. "Objection noted. The fine stands. Would you like to make it $200,000, Miss Bondi? Because questioning my rulings further will do exactly that." The threat hung in the air. Pam became acutely aware of her client beside her, of his case that needed proper representation. This was bigger than her now. Pushing further might impact her ability to serve her client effectively. "No, Your Honor," she replied, her voice cool and professional despite the rage building inside her. "I would like the record to reflect my objection on First Amendment grounds, but I'm prepared to proceed with today's hearing." "Wise choice," Hoffman said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Now, regarding the contract dispute between Gulf Coast Manufacturing and Coastal Suppliers." The next 3 hours were surreal. Pam presented her client's case with flawless precision, cross-examined witnesses with surgical accuracy, and objected at exactly the right moments, all while the weight of a $100,000 fine hung over her, and the gold cross remained visible at her neck. Internally, her mind was racing. Every attorney in Tampa knew about Judge Hoffman's difficult personality. But this wasn't mere difficulty. This was an abuse of power, a direct attack on religious expression, and a violation of constitutional rights so blatant it was breathtaking. When Judge Hoffman finally called for the lunch recess, the courtroom erupted into whispers. As soon as he departed, Jeffrey turned to her, his face a mixture of concern and disbelief. "Pam, what the hell just happened? $100,000 for wearing a necklace?" Pam gathered her documents deliberately, buying time to compose her thoughts. "It happened because Judge Hoffman decided to abuse his power today." "This is insane," Jeffrey said, running a hand through his silver hair. "I can help with the fine. The company can—" "No," Pam cut him off firmly. "This isn't your battle, and I won't let it become a financial burden for you or the company. This is between me and a judge who's overstepped his bounds." Martin Chen, the opposing counsel, approached their table. He'd been opposing Pam in cases for over a decade. They were rivals, but maintained professional respect. "Pam, that was completely out of line," he said quietly, glancing toward the door where Hoffman had exited. "I've never seen anything like it." "Neither have I, Martin, but I appreciate you saying so." Chen lowered his voice further. "For what it's worth, I think half the attorneys in Tampa will be ready to support you if you challenge this. Hoffman's been getting worse, but this—" He shook his head. As the courtroom cleared, Pam's phone vibrated in her pocket. She pulled it out to find a string of text messages from Lauren Rivera, her paralegal of 7 years. "Pam, what's happening?" "The clerk called our office about a contempt fine. $100,000. Is that a typo?" "Reporters are already calling." Tampa Bay Times, Channel 8, Fox 13. Words spreading fast. Pam wasn't surprised. Courthouses were gossip factories, and a story this outrageous would travel at light speed. She quickly texted back, "It's real. Hoffman fined me for wearing my cross necklace. Meeting you at the office in 20. She turned to Jeffrey. "We had a good morning. Your testimony was compelling and Chen's witnesses didn't land any significant blows, but I need you to understand something. This situation with Hoffman might create some media attention." Jeffrey nodded grimly. "Do what you need to do, Pam. I trust you." She gathered her briefcase and headed for the exit. As she pushed through the heavy oak doors into the corridor, a young court clerk hurried to catch up with her. "Ms. Bondi," the woman said, glancing around nervously, I just wanted to say that was wrong in there. I've worked for Judge Hoffman for 2 years, and he's never done anything like that before." Pam studied the woman, barely 30, likely fresh out of law school, working her way up the judicial system ladder. "Thank you for saying that. What's your name?" "Sarah Mitchell." "I'm just a clerk, but—" She hesitated, lowering her voice. "Judge Hoffman wears a Masonic ring every day. No one says anything about it." With that, she turned and hurried back toward the courtroom, leaving Pam standing in the corridor with this new piece of information: a Masonic ring, a symbol with religious connotations that Hoffman apparently had no problem displaying in his neutral courtroom. The hypocrisy was staggering. Pam stood outside the courthouse as the Florida sun dipped low over Tampa Bay, casting long shadows across the courthouse steps. The crowd had thinned, the cameras packed away, but the impact of the day remained etched in every corner of her mind. She touched the cross at her neck, still there, still shining. This had never been about making headlines. It had never been about defiance for its own sake. It was about principle, about the quiet strength of refusing to back down when something sacred was challenged. And now, with the contempt fine overturned, the precedent set, and a community of voices behind her, she knew they'd made something more than just a legal argument. They'd made a stand. As she walked back to her office, the messages kept coming. Texts, emails, calls from strangers, colleagues, and students. People of every faith, background, and belief who saw themselves in her fight. Who saw hope. Some battles aren't sought. They find you. But when they do and you stand your ground, you don't just defend your rights. You defend something far greater: freedom, dignity, and the truth that in this country, symbols of faith don't belong in the shadows. They belong right where they've always been, worn with pride, protected by law, and held close to the heart. Pam walked on, head high, cross shining, ready for whatever came next. The end.